Hey everyone, so part two of our video here. What I really want to do before I begin example 4 is just to let you know that I have attached the last 2 pages of the notes. Honestly, they are just a bunch of more practice problems that I don't want to make you all sit through and watch a recording of it, because realistically these are still problems that we've seen before in the past, and it's just asking you to calculate. And so once I do example 4, you should have plenty of background to continue these questions in the future if you want. And if you do practice these problems and you want to check your answers, feel free to let me know. Happy to discuss them. And we can go through those problems if you're stuck on how we get any of those answers from these notes. But what we're going to finish off with is just this example 4, and then we're going to conclude these set of notes. So example 4, it's saying suppose those new Bluetooth headphones from example 3 sold for $125. And so now what it's saying is write the revenue function. So the revenue function is just saying, remember, when we go back to our original part of the notes, revenue is the total revenue is just the total amount received for the sale of X units. So if we receive $125, we can just say that R of X is going to be equal to $125 times X. And if we want to do the profit function, remember this is that function of pi of X. And remember, that is just your revenue minus the cost. So then that's just going to be the situation of $125 X minus our cost function of what we had back in example 3. So if we go back to example 3, our cost function was what I underlined in orange. And so this is going to be 125X minus 1500 plus 50X plus 0.01X squared. And if we were to simplify this by distributing the negative symbol and then combining like terms, we find out that this function simplifies to be negative 1500 plus 75X minus 0.01X squared. And so here is now our profit function. If we wanted to find the marginal revenue function, again, marginal revenue, the same way you find marginal cost is the same way you would find marginal revenue. Marginal revenue is simply going to be equal to R prime of X, right? So marginal cost was equal to C prime of X, and this is going to be equal to 125. Now, with this information, let's compute the marginal profit function if 100 sets of headphones are produced and sold. Interpret your findings. So what we want to do here is, if we want to find the marginal profit, well, we have our profit function here of pi of X. We want to find pi prime of X. So if we take pi prime of X, we would then have, remember, we're taking the derivative of this function up here. I'm double boxing this up here. That is what I want to take a derivative of. So then that gives me 75 minus 0.02X. And then we want to find out at 100. So what we want to find is pi prime of 100 is equal to 75 minus 0.02 times 100. And so what we get here is pi prime of 100 is equal to about $73. And what we can now do is interpret our findings and say, when 100 headphone sets are produced and sold, the profit the profit is increasing at a rate of 73. Oh, I cannot write tonight. I'm sorry. $73 per set. And so A little side note that I want to add into these problems and make sure that's clear to every student in this class. Whenever we are calculating problems and you are asked to interpret, you are asked to justify, you are asked to do something, you need to include a sentence at the end of your findings. This final answer right here that I have is not enough. That is not an interpretation. You have to write a sentence in context to the problem. And really make sure you're paying attention to that, because in future tests, you will lose points if you are not writing in context, if you're asked to interpret something, okay? Now, and when in doubt, the best thing you can do is just write a sentence anyways. It doesn't hurt to do that, because it's going to cover your basis and be sure, well, it's like, hey, I'm not sure if they're asking me to do this, but I'm going to make sure by just adding a quick one sentence and explaining what my answer means. Now, part E. How many headphones should the company produce in order to maximize their profits? So the key word here is this word maximize. This word maximize is the key word because we all know what maximum means. If we think about a parabola, that's the vertex. Well, if we think about derivatives, again, we're talking about profits. Well, when do I find the maximum of any function? Remember, we're thinking about physics or even back in just calculus. That happens when the derivative is at the highest point. And what is the slope of the derivative there? Well, the slope is 0. So what we want to do is find, whoops, I want my pencil here. We want to find when pi prime of x is equal to 0. And so I'm going to take this pi prime of x and set it equal to 0. So I get 75 minus 0.02x is equal to 0. And I get 0.02x is equal to, not 0, 75. And I get x is equal to 3,750. And so what we can say is profit is maximized where I prime of x is equal to 0. And the company should produce 3,750 sets of headphones. And so I really like to end, we're going to talk about this graph below in just a moment, but I really like to end this problem, a good way to end this lesson. And it's a good way to understand, for example, I don't know, the latest iPhone or the latest video game system. And people wonder, hey, why is there, when we're pre-ordering stuff, why is there suddenly a shortage? Why didn't they make more? They should have just made, 10 million of them, because they've calculated, hey, what do we need to at least, what do we need to make to at least make some profit? Then after that, if we get more demand, we're going to make more. But at first, we're going to make this set number. And so typically, this might not be true in every business, but clearly, as you can see, using calculus, these businesses figure out, okay, we need to make this amount. We're not going to make more until this amount has sold, or at least, we're seeing some trend that this amount's going to sell, then we'll make more. So here's a nice little insight for you when you're waiting for the next big phone, next video game console or whatever. This is really telling you a better understanding, like, oh, now I know why these companies do this. So let's look at what a graph of marginal cost and revenue and profit and so forth is going with. So here in this graph, at the right, notice the break-even points occur where the revenue equals the cost. So that's these points here, right? We have our break-even points at these red dots. And so whenever our revenue is equal to the cost, we break even. That's hopefully, that's pretty understandable right off the bat. Now, a company will obviously be most interested to know how to maximize profits. The maximum or minimum profits can occur where MC is equal to MR. Remember, marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. C prime of X is equal to R prime of X. However, maximum or minimum profits do not necessarily have to occur where our marginal cost equals the marginal revenue. They can also occur at endpoints. So consider the slopes of the tangent lines. Then when MC is less than MR, a company will make more in extra revenue than it will spend in extra costs. by increasing production. So notice here, if I have my revenue function like this parabola here, everything, whenever this graph is above our cost function, we're making pure profit. And so this here is the representation of that dollar amount that is of that profit. And when we get a little bit further into further units, how to calculate this area and find out how much money that really is actually something we can do, but at the current moment we can't. Okay, so just a small little tidbit of this, again, just reminding you, everything from example 5 on are just extra practice problems for you. If you do work through them and you want to check your answers, let me know. Happy to go over those with you. Other than that, just make sure you jot some questions down, add your comments into the videos if needed, but make sure you come to class prepared with those questions, and I'll see you then.